And we're live.
All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm sorry, man. It's been a marathon podcast day. I don't even know what fucking podcast I'm on right now. I think this is my own podcast. This is BYOB with Mike Fanone. There we go.
Just the wrong Peter this week. Wrong Peter.
Yeah. So I want to introduce everybody. Peter Rothpletz. You may know him previously from the Don Lemon show. We stole him from Don Lemon, and now he's on the team. So welcome, Peter.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Yeah, man. What are we talking about today?
We got a bunch of different things. We can touch quickly on Nixon Game 4. Have you seen the viral meme? My mayor's Muslim, my bagels are Jewish, my Christian's Dior, Nixon 4. I guess we didn't make Nixon 4. We still can make Nixon 5. We can also talk about Graham Plattner carrying the main Democratic primary race for Senate, despite a whole host of scandals, some a bit more scandalous than others, in my opinion. And then we have Trump also tacoing yet again out of massive strikes on Iran, and some reporting that he was contemplating possibly even using nuclear weapons in the country. So yeah, crazy news week, crazy news era, as it always is with MAGA.
You got to talk to me like I'm a small child today, Peter, because I've been doing podcasts all day and I haven't watched any news. So I have no idea what crazy ass shit Donald Trump has done in the past 10 hours. But apparently, so nuclear weapons in Iran, it's on the table.
So he has not said that publicly. That's been reported by a few different outlets that it was discussed behind the scenes. But yeah, the latest is, as of last night, he said once again that the U.S. was going to launch unprecedented strikes on civilian infrastructure, on the people of Iran. And then a little over just an hour or so ago, he announced that, nope, never mind. We're pulling out. We're not doing that anymore. So yeah, I just saw the market is up some 700, 800 points already, because nobody ever learns with this guy. It is the same thing every single week.
Well, somewhere there's a Trump associate who just pocketed like $10 million
easily
stock market because of Trump's bullshit rhetoric. It's wild.
One thing that we're going to have to do, if Democrats are ever even allowed to take power again, maybe that's a separate conversation, is not only do we have to prosecute the hell out of these motherfuckers, but we also need to ban Kalshi and all these other prediction markets.
Oh, yeah.
Just so rife with corruption and abuse. And I don't know if it's one of the Trump kids or if it's just some staffer who happens to be in the right room at the right time, but somebody is just making oodles and oodles and oodles of money off of, mass wanton death and destruction in Iran. It's disgusting.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. Like, I know that kitchen table issues are always front and center with everybody's election run, but I think that the American people have a stomach for corruption as being front and center for the next administration to tackle. Whether it's, like you said, congressional members becoming uber wealthy by insider trading, whether it's, I don't know, any host of things. But like you said, there need to be indictments, arrests, perp walks, public trials, and, we need to clean up this government, which, we probably should have started tackling these issues decades ago. And now we have just gotten to the point of just absolute, complete and total corruption, widespread corruption. So much so that nobody's even trying to hide it anymore.
Mm-hmm. No, and people love to harp on how even today, even with all the corruption that we're seeing out of the Trump administration, Democrats are still about as unpopular. They're really more unpopular than they've ever been. And I don't think that's fake news or fake polling, to be clear. But I do think that people are interpreting the wrong conclusion from that, which is like, yes, people are frustrated with Democrats. You're never going to win over the Republicans. But the reason why the Democratic base is so angry at their own party is they feel like they're not doing anything. They're not fighting back against these motherfuckers. They're occasionally holding a good hearing and being combative with Pam Bondi, rest in peace, or with Pete Hegseth and company. But like, these folks they're felons, and we're just acting like it's normal. It's not.
Here's my beef with the Democratic Party, and there's multifaceted, but I'm going to keep the personal issues, set them aside, and just talk about, the greater issues. One of them is, what's the fucking plan?
Yep.
Like, I get it. We can continuously draw a contrast between our candidates, our incumbents, and Donald Trump's, administration and his policies, and how detrimental they've been to the economy, to, our day-to-day lives, our mental health as a nation. But what's the fucking plan? Like, how are we going to go about fixing these things? I mean, you could talk about like ICE, CBP bad. Okay, but what's the fix there? Immigration policy bad. Okay, well, we've been talking about immigration reform in this country literally for decades. I mean, going back to the fucking 80s. And then the other thing is the Democratic Party talks about, and rightfully so, re-engaging with working class Americans. I believe that the Democratic Party owes working class Americans a tremendous debt. The Democratic Party rode on the backs of working class Americans and immigrants for decades, and promised them, when we saw in the 1980s, when we saw industry change in this country, and a lot of the jobs get sent, the typical working class jobs get sent out overseas. There was a promise that we would re-educate those individuals and provide them with jobs here, and it just never fucking happened. It never materialized, and so you just ended up seeing towns like my grandfather's hometown of Sharon, Pennsylvania. Once the steel mill closed, it was decimated. Hundreds of thousands of jobs were lost, and now, I mean, the gross domestic product of that town is like fucking fast food. And so, but then the party's idea of re-engaging is like putting forward a candidate like a fucking John Fetterman, who is like a caricature. It's almost insulting to working class people, because first of all, like, being working class is a lot more than wearing a Carhartt fucking sweatshirt, which I actually believe he wears more so because he's tall and fat, and it's like a muumuu rather than, it's like a man muumuu, but because they make like 4XL in their sizes. But I digress. Like, we want like real people that really understand the plight of working class Americans, not some trust fund baby who wears a costume every day. And then, fast forward 2 years into his, his first term as senator, he completely betrays the entire base that got him elected. And so they look at the Democratic Party with tremendous amount of skepticism. The same thing with Abigail Spanberger here in Virginia. I mean, this was a person who I attended numerous rallies and, fundraising events for. At every single one of them, there was a common thread. The SEIU was present, which is the labor union that represents public sector workers, who Abigail Spanberger promised that she would allow them the opportunity to organize and to, gain union representation. And then the first thing she does in office is veto a bill that would allow that to happen. And so, if you're going to claim to be the party of working class Americans, but then you put forth candidates that shit all over working class Americans, it ain't going to fly.
So that was a great warm up to one of the other topics I wanted to talk about with you, Michael. So Graham Plattner, as I said at the top, won the Maine Democratic Senate primary on Tuesday. He has obviously become quite a lightning rod within the party. because of a number of different scandals. I want to read, Peter just flagged this in the chat. This is from The Resistance is Here 1972. He's saying, "Hey, Michael, thank you for all you do. I appreciate Graham Plattner taking ownership of his past, but I feel like he hasn't been totally transparent and honest about his past. I find it a hard pill to swallow supporting someone like him when if it was a Republican, we would be nailing them to their hypocritical cross. How do you square supporting someone knowing it's probably the only option to swing that seat versus refusing to support behavior like that? Let's keep holding their feet to the fire." So just for everyone in the chat, Michael, I'll quickly catch them up. Last week, the New York Times published a lengthy piece where 2 reporters interviewed, I believe, 6 women who previously had some romantic history with Graham Plattner. 3 of the women had not a ill word to say of him. They said he was a wonderful guy and they loved him, or maybe not were in love with him, but they had a just fine time while dating him. And then there were 3 women who did not have as glowing reviews. 2 in particular said that, I don't know, they were more general gripes about their past relationships with him. And then there was 1 woman who happens to be a former Heritage Foundation staffer who alleged some degree of physical abuse in the relationship. The reporting itself has also become a lightning rod, as I think this man and this race has become sort of an intra-Democratic Party civil war for the future of what Democrats are going to stand for and who's going to represent them. So, Michael, if you want to maybe first give general thoughts about Plattner, about the race, and then maybe if you want to address the substantive question.
Yeah, no, I'll tackle each issue one after another. But first, I think that it's important, all of us can pontificate about, Graham Plattner as a candidate and talk about Graham Plattner as a candidate. And listen, he's a candidate, so that's all on the table. That being said, it's up to the voters of Maine to make the decision. And I think overwhelmingly they turned out for the primary. I think it was like 75%. Yep. Supported Plattner, and Janet Mills was still on the ballot. So she was still an option despite having pulled out back in April because she was lacking the resources, AKA she wasn't getting any donations. So that in and of itself tells me something. Graham Plattner, an oyster farmer, combat veteran in the Marine Corps, was able to outraise a career establishment politician. He's got a lot of support.
Yeah.
I'll talk to tattoo first, and I'll just give my personal analysis of that as somebody who understands military culture, because the vast majority of my friends are, combat veterans themselves, understand that, like, the culture, but also PTSD and what that does to a person post-service and what that transition looks like, and having, struggled alongside of, many of my friends who have departed from the military and seen what that transition looked like, just like my own transition out of law enforcement into whatever the hell it is that I do right now, which I still don't even really know. But the tattoo. So he gets this tattoo, and it resembles a Nazi Totenkopf, which is a skull and crossbones, but a very, specific skull and crossbones. And he received it in Croatia. And I'll tell you why I believe his account, that he didn't know what it was necessarily, and that he did not get it because he ascribes or agrees with Nazi ideology. He got it in Croatia, according to him. I've been to Croatia. So tattooing is still very much so part of the subculture in Europe. It's not as popular as it is in the United States, but it's certainly not like, and when you go into a tattoo shop, you're going to see flash work. And flash work is the tattoo designs that are put up on the wall so that, somebody can go in, if they're short of creative ideas, they can just point to something and say, I want that, and get it on them. Well, if you go to Europe, Eastern Europe specifically, but even Croatia and other parts of Europe, those symbols are very much part of tattooing culture. It's taboo. It's meant to shock people. And so the idea that somebody could walk into a Croatian tattoo parlor, see that image and pick it and not necessarily attribute it to or have gotten it because they were a Nazi makes complete and total sense to me. The other thing is that, this guy's literally talked about a whole host of things on Reddit and never once ascribed to be a neo-Nazi or ascribed any type of Nazi ideology, which I imagine he probably would have done so, had he gotten that tattoo for that reason. So to me, that's believable. The Reddit posts, I haven't looked at each and every one of them. Has he said some disturbing shit on there? Absolutely. But I mean, listen, I know a lot of guys that separated from the military, a lot of guys that did combat tours, that experienced combat, that have said some crazy ass shit. And I guess you just kind of have to take it within context and understand that PTSD is real, and that it can take you to some pretty dark places. Do I think that Graham Plattner has been as transparent as he could be about those things? Maybe not. But I also recognize the fact that he's running for office and he has people that are or that he's consulting with that may not be as familiar with what that experience is like and may not know how to communicate that to the general public. They're probably telling him to just, minimize it and move on. And so to me, the things that he said publicly have been adequate.
I want to crib some language from Zed Jelani, Michael. I sent this in the team chat yesterday. You might remember. I mean, if Graham Plattner were truly a Nazi, he could just run as a Nazi, right? We have James Fishman and right. Other personalities running around the country openly saying that they are openly espousing neo-Nazi ideology.
The primary Susan Collins.
I just don't. I think I agree with you pretty much on everything that you said. I think he handled the tattoo poorly.
Yeah.
I think he waited far too long to cover it up. I do somewhat suspect he might be fibbing about exactly when he knew what it truly meant. But ultimately, do I think he's a Nazi? No. I think that he's just a well-meaning guy who made a couple of poor decisions at least. But before we go on, Michael, I got word from the boss. We want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Ground News, because as we've said before, this show doesn't have corporate backers controlling the conversation. The reason we can do streams like this, where we can just talk honestly, is because of viewer support and partners that actually believe in independent media. And honestly, right now, with everything happening politically, Ground News has become one of the best and most important tools I use. Ground News is an app and website that lets you compare how different outlets are covering the same story across the political spectrum. You can compare headlines side by side, see political bias at the publication level, and spot when important stories are being minimized or ignored completely, depending on who's telling the story. One feature I use a lot is Blind Spot, or rather the Blind Spot feed. It shows you stories heavily covered on one side of the media landscape, while the other side is barely touching them. And in a moment where narratives are getting shaped in real time, that really matters. If you actually want to understand what's going on, instead of just getting fed one stupid fucking version of events, I strongly recommend checking it out. Go to groundnews.com/MFS, as in Michael Fanone Show, to get 40% off the Vantage plan. Sorry for that, Michael. Just paying the bills.
That's right. Thank you. One day I'll remember to actually read the damn thing my fucking self.
So, Michael, I only got 3 more minutes or so, unfortunately. Have you been watching the NBA Finals? Are you a Knicks guy? Do you not really care?
Yeah, I've just never been a pro basketball guy. Like I grew up, my dad went to Georgetown University for undergrad, and then he went there for law school. And so I was a big Georgetown Hoyas fan pretty much all the way up until John Thompson III replaced his father. And then they just went down the shitter. But I was there for Dikembe Mutombo, Alonzo Mourning, Allen Iverson, and even, I think I was like 4 years old when I saw Patrick Ewing play. So it was, that's the extent of my basketball experience. That being said, I did enjoy the Knicks fans booing the shit out of Donald Trump. But have I been following the series? No.
It is kind of, so I'm not a huge basketball guy either, but just living in New York and walking around the city the past few days has been surreal. I mean, I'm talking about, you'll just see people like giving each other high fives and handshakes if they're wearing Knicks merch. I've never seen the city so together. It's like that silly scene in like one of the first it's not Star Wars, Spider-Man movies, where like all the New Yorkers come together and start throwing cans of and garbage at the Green Goblin. They're like, don't fuck with New York. I've never felt such solidarity in the city. And I also do think it's awesome that Trump got booed. He's become a villain in this story because he had to insert himself when he had no business being there. And what was he thinking?
I know exactly what he was thinking, Peter.
Yeah.
He was thinking, New York hates me. I know they hate me. And I am going to insert myself into this game and piss off every single fucking person. I mean, you saw the smirk on his face while he was being booed. He knew he was being
booed. Before he fell asleep.
Right, before he fell asleep. But he was like, you know what? Fuck every last person. Fuck the people that couldn't go to the watch parties. Fuck the people that spent 4 hours trying to go through Secret Service security so that they could get into the game. Fuck all of you. I'm Donald Trump. And that's it. I think it was nothing more than that. Was he was going to to piss off everybody. I remember early on, like in my book tour back in 2022, my first stop was New York. I was there for a week, and I had lunch with a reporter from The Guardian, and we went to this famous steakhouse. I can't remember the name of it, but I was sitting in there. And all these people kept coming up to me and they recognized me and they were telling me, thank you for your service and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, the one thing you'll find here is Republican, Democrat, Independent. Everybody hates Donald Trump. And the reason we hate Donald Trump is because we know who he is. We know him. And if everyone got to know Donald Trump on a personal level or just through his business dealings, everybody would hate him. And I think we're starting to experience that now. Like Donald Trump may very well be in the Guinness Book of World Records for the most hated human being on earth.
I think that you're probably right. I mean, my mind just goes to, I don't know if you saw this late last week or maybe early this week, Michael, but Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump are apparently trying to construct Epstein Island 2.0.
In Albania.
Yeah, they're looking to build like a weird, I don't want to defame them here, but like a very weird Epstein-esque compound on this island. I mean, the parallels are just too stark to not comment on. And the people of Albania are taking out to the streets in the tens of thousands saying, fuck you. It's something about this family where they just, you almost have to respect it. Like they cannot take a hint. They do not understand that they are repugnant human beings who say and believe evil things and are hucksters and thieves. And anywho, hopefully one day soon we'll be free of them. But with that, Michael, I got to run. Thank you for hanging with me. And thanks for all y'all watching out there. We'll get more questions from you next week when the real Peter is back.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Michael.
He got froze.
I want to take a second because what we're talking about here, especially with candidates in the midterms coming up, is exactly why I don't rely on any single news source anymore. When elections ramp up, the information environment gets messy fast. Narratives get shaped, stories get emphasized or ignored, and depending on where you're getting your news, you can walk away with two completely different versions of reality. That's why I use Ground News. Ground News is an app and website that lets you compare how the same story is being covered across the political spectrum. You can see the political leanings of outlets, compare headlines side by side, and understand where coverage is being framed in a certain way or where something isn't being covered at all. One feature I use a lot is Blind Spot Feed. It shows you stories that are getting heavy coverage on one side of the political spectrum and barely any on the other, which is especially important during the election cycle. If you actually want to understand what's going on, not just what you're being shown, you need something like this. So go to groundnews.com/MFS and subscribe to their Vantage plan for 40% off. The link is the only way to get the discount.